Hemant, what feeling here? So you had mentioned anger earlier, but can you speak to what is most alive for you? Mad, sad, glad, fear, or shame? And it can be more than one.
Yeah. Uh, to be honest, this is the thing I'm struggling with most because the environment I put into, the container I put into, I adapt to the environment. So if I hang out with some happy persons, for sure I might overcome whatever feeling I have right now. But
Mhm,
what I'm sensing is I'm just calm for this conversation.
mhm, mhm, mhm. That is precisely what I think I want to get into next too, because there's a difference between a feeling and an emotion. So a feeling, my understanding of a feeling is what is alive for you right now, being in the energy of others, who might be vibrating, at a certain, at a certain feeling or a certain emotion, or a certain, yeah, an emotion is where there's a story that comes up, or there's something from the past that is informing that feeling. So what I'm hearing from you, Hemant, is that you're feeling the flow of this conversation. You're present to your feelings at the moment, and that's good. I think we're all in a good place where I think that we can explore the feeling as opposed to the emotion, where there's oftentimes trauma, there's oftentimes a story that hasn't been integrated, where the emotion of anger or fear or shame uh, often comes up because we're replaying a story from the past. And and there's a lot I've been noticing as well too, is that there's almost like this demonization, or there's this avoidance of the past. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in that, because even though people don't want to go there, that's where you can uproot the story, uproot the emotion, so that the feeling is, you can be present to what is real in the moment, what is happening right here and now. So at this moment, before we do a little bit of an exercise, I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to start to run some of the pre-recorded material that I made a few days ago. And what's going to be running now, what the viewer is going to be watching now, is really kind of how to build a regenerative economy, or organically. And I've been noticing over the last couple times I've been making these recordings, is that changing the financial system is not really the goal. What the goal is really to help humanity become more collaborative, become more evolved. And how the financial system changes is just a measurement, a reflection of these conscious conversations. So yeah, so I'm going to go to my pre-recorded stuff now. All right, welcome. This is going to be supplemental material to the Law of Magnetism. So my purpose in making this recording today is to provide some visuals and just start the conversation about what is it going to take to start implementing universal basic income, and how to organize that from the bottom up, from the ground up, from kind of like a grassroots perspective. One of the beliefs that I hold, and it's just it's my truth, and I don't want anyone else to think that this is a generalization or anybody else's truth. But my truth is that help, as far as helping everybody to become equal, to be able to share in economic wealth or global wealth, is not going to come from the top down. It's going to come from the bottom up, from the conscious agreements that we make between each other as equals, peer to peer. So as I'm presenting this information, again, I will say that this is not the only way. It takes everybody. It takes everybody kind of participating in conversation culture, to be able to build that trust, to be able to deepen those relationships where we're willing to invest time in each other. So that's why I offer this material up for free, because it's not really a matter of convincing or competing anybody that this can help everybody. It's really just a matter of inviting you into the space, inviting you into conversation culture, and helping us understand how time banking and logging those hours, will lead to universal basic income if that's what we want. So let me look at my notes here. Um, I'll just kind of re-emphasize what I said before in a previous recording as well too. To me, this is not so much about making money, although I would like to see everybody benefit financially from this. To me, measuring how the economy flows or how the finances flows, how that's really just an indication of how we are evolving as a species, how we are evolving as people who are willing, to respond and receive each other's value. So that's what this means to me. It's just a measurement of how collectively, as a global community, we're better able to listen. We're better able to collaborate, and we're better able to look at what is healthy competition and what is not so healthy competition, to ourselves, to our emotions, to the earth, and to our ecosystem. So before I go into my slideshow presentation, let me just look at my notes here. So yeah, that's really what it's about, is developing trust. So anybody that is invited into this space, there's a few agreements that we're entertaining. One of those agreements is that if you're watching this, or if I'm inviting you into this space, I'm asking you to consider treating everybody as an equal. So even though I'm presenting this material, I'm the steward of this material. I'm not the expert. I'm not the authority. I'm inviting you into this space under the understanding that what we are talking about is creating a banking system where everybody is entitled to the $1 investment that compounds upon itself 20 times. And that's based on effort, that's based on time invested. It's not based on the subjective judgments of people trying to compete in a competitive market, in a competitive ecosystem, and purely on driving profit. So there may be people who come to the table who do have that interest, and if that is the case, we'll talk about values. We'll talk about being explicit about this. But if you're watching this and if you're sharing this, I encourage you to have conversation around it. And again, it's not about making a decision. It's not about convincing. It's not about propagating anything. It's just about inviting others into the space and asking, what do you think? What do you feel? Is this worth investing your time into now that you understand it better? So so the reason why I started out with talking about living library in these natural law conversations is that it helps us to engage in collaboration, engage in what I call conversation culture, so that it's not about debate, it's not about invalidating someone else's truth. It's about investing the time to see if you want to invest more time in partnerships, what I call equal partnerships. So I started out with that, with the living library, because that kind of creates the vehicle and the container to explore what I'm going to go over here today, which is about growing the living library and growing the time bank 1 hour at a time. So what is worth your time? What is worth exploring for you? Then I went into a little more of the mechanics between time and money and how the time bank comes into play. So I'm going to be exploring that here in this recording and on future recordings as well too, about how really what the time bank does is it just tracks how and where and with who we are spending our time with. So it's about transparency. It's about a little bit more openness, so that every hour you spend in a living library or in a time bank is tracked, and that's going to help change the infrastructure of banking. It's going to actually change central banking to decentralized banking, where we all have agency, where we all have a say in the flow of finances and money. So the reason I started out with living library culture or conversation culture is so that you can get to know somebody, so that you can both decide, you can co-create whether or not this relationship is worth deepening. because when money gets involved right away, there's a lot of judgments about, I'm putting in $1,000 to be coached by this person or whatnot, and it's not meeting my expectations. So, there's resentment, there's buyer's remorse on all that. But in living library culture and in time banking culture, where you can invest what you want when you can, and there's no pressure around that, then it's a matter of deciding for yourself, who do you want to invest more time in? And, who do you want to set boundaries with where, you know, they're not bad people, but their values are not aligned. So, how do you invest enough time to say yes and when to say no? So that's what this is all about today. So I'm going to go into my slideshow presentation here in a moment. But I talked a little bit about what I call psychological DNA. And what that really means is, how we're, I'm going to show the graphic here in a moment, but really how we're coming to a conversation. So we're so used to being in this system that is competitive. It's about convincing. It's about, it's about being right. So we're going to change that by being in living library culture, and we change what I call the psychological DNA, where it's not about getting to the thing. It's about deepening the relationship and understanding. It's listening more to understand rather than listening to interject. So I'll show my slide here in a moment. Okay, so here we are on our title screen for the Law of Magnetism. So I'm going to start with this page here, and this is a page that I had featured in the Law of Correspondence. As above, so below. The inner reflects the outer, as within, so without. So I'd like to use this metaphor of cellular division or cellular mitosis, in that all the cells are equal. They all have a function. They all have a purpose. So when I talk about psychological DNA, what I mean is being able to participate in collaborative culture, in conversation culture. Now, being able to participate in that kind of conversation, like we've been having with these natural law conversations, it's very uncomfortable when your intention is to get somewhere or to do something or accomplish the thing or get things done. It's very uncomfortable, and I understand that. My experience with these conversations is when you're in an environment where it's about everybody participating, it's about ongoing inquiry, it's about listening to everybody's perspective. It changes the tone and it changes the environment. And that's why I've been really, really repeating and going over and over again what I think. And again, this is just my thing. It's not scientifically proven or anything like that. But my impression is what happens in the brain is that we start to go more into curiosity and appreciation, so that we're actually developing. Our brains are actually stretching, and we're developing the capacity to be able to hold conversation. We're able to hold relationships better. So that's what I mean when I say we're changing the psychological DNA, and that's how we're changing the entire environment from the inside out. We're not trying to create one structure or one group or one initiative to overcome or overthrow the other initiative. What we're doing is we're just doing things a little differently. We're playing a different game, and we're starting to grow that from the inside out. So yeah, what the goal is, or what my goal is to help everybody be able to initiate 1,000,000 hours of conversation, of conscious collaborative conversation. And that might take the form of a living library conversation. That might take the form of doing a service, a holistic based service like yoga or coaching or martial arts, or anything that is your passion. And that's something that is within the time bank. So what you're doing is you're creating this collaborative culture where everybody can consent that, okay, I see something here. I see something in this regenerative economy, and I care about, or I resonate with a person enough to trust them with this information, to be able to provide a service or receive a service, because the relationship is there. I've spent the time to develop this relationship, or there's something that's inherently flowing, and I trust that if I receive or if I give a service, to this person, that we're all, that there's enough intrinsic value to be able to enter into this system together. So the living library conversation is the original cell. So I want to stress that every time you enter into one of these conversations, you are the originator. I mean, even though I'm passing on this information, I'm sharing this, it really starts with you. And that's what reboots the system, every single time somebody has a time bank exchange or somebody has a living library conversation. So this is kind of like the model. This is what I call the 2x2 algorithm. So if you are, let's say, the reader of a living library, and you ask two people to come in and have a conversation for an hour, and all you're doing is just practicing reflection, practicing, repeating back or reflecting back what resonates with you, what you appreciate about what the storyteller is talking about. If you're asking clarifying questions, you're playing the role of the reader. And so if you can do that for an hour, and that's kind of what this whole, program is kind of really helping to set you up for success on, how to be a reader and how to be a book, how to be a speaker. So if you spend an hour being a reader and you spend an hour being the book, that's two stories that have been generated. And if you can encourage others, to do the same, that will turn into four stories, and that turns into eight stories. So I go back to the question that we asked in back in law of gender, where what if each story that we use to describe our current situation or our past or where we want to be, what if those were ours? So the goal is to have a living library conversation for an hour. Well, there you go again. So you are the catalyst. You are what I call the original cell. Where the sperm meets the egg, because you're practicing being both a reader and a book, and that's how 2 hours become 4 hours, because others are paying that forward and being involved in collaboration or in conversation culture, and that divides out like the original cell in cellular mitosis. And eventually, when you get to the 20 degrees, or the 20 generations that we talked about in ancestral mathematics, you're looking at 1,048,576 hours. So in a previous conversation, we talked about, well, what if, because if you go back 20 generations, it took 1 million acts of procreation just to make you. Well, what if you could kind of ESP or or send a mental message to each one of your ancestors to just take $1 and put it in a bank account for you to enjoy, for when you come of age and when you're ready to steward or nurture or go out on your own mission, whatever that is. So that's $1 million. Well, this 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 idea, and the idea that I'm asking everyone who feels compelled to be in this space to nurture, this idea makes that a reality. So we're going to go with that. We're going to go with that analogy, that metaphor of the cellular division here, and we're going to go a little deeper into that about how do we practically start to create the relationships where everybody can enjoy the $1 investment that compounds upon itself 20 times, which is 1 million, 1 million hours. And again, just to do the math, what you're doing is, and this is where it becomes a conscious agreement, if that gets set in motion, you are the one, you are the one responsible, for paying that forward, and your efforts will lead to taking 120 years. If you divide up a million hours, divided it up, it's about 43,691 days. That's 120 years of time that you're taking out of this competitive culture and reinvesting it in the collaborative environment. So that is the power of interdependency apart from a hierarchy, where we're really treating each other like equals. So again, that's playing both roles in the living library conversation to develop the relationship. So, so what does it make possible? Asking, what does your life make possible? What does what does your intentions, what do your goals, what do your values make possible? That's the feminine, aspect of this. The active is, what is it going to take? So what's the next step? What is it going to take to make this possible? So that's why I like to have possibility conversations where we say, okay, what's the end goal, and let's reverse engineer it. What is it going to take to make this happen? What is it going to take to make this happen? So for everybody to be able to have $1 million funding for whatever it is that you deem fit for that, what is it going to take? Well, what it's going to take is going to take a new accounting system that incorporates time differently. I'm going to share that in the next report. But what is it going to take to set up that system? Well, what it's going to take is going to take more collaborative culture and understanding, how competitive culture detracts from that. Okay, so what is it going to take to create this collaborative culture? Well, and then you keep reverse engineering back. And what I landed on was, well, what it's going to take is creating this natural law series to help start the conversation. All right, so this is, again, going back to that metaphor of cellular division. So as you get to understand this entire paradigm that we're creating, you understand that you are the original cell. And I like to invite people to have conversations around what is worth your time. And let's just start out with something simple, because we're all competing in the market economy. We all have to make a living. We're all surviving at the moment. I mean, most of us are kind of in that situation, not everybody. So what is it worth? What is worth it to you to maybe just volunteer an hour a week so that you can accumulate 20 hours? So that's how we measure. That's how we measure this accounting system, is in blocks of 20 hours. So I put Nefertiti here in the first cell because she's already put in hundreds of hours, but she's participated in two different groups that I've been involved in. So this did not start. This initiative did not start with these recordings. They started years ago, but specifically about 2 years ago, we had two different groups that Nefertiti and I shared. We shared space in. One was what we call the bridge, where we help align the power between mental health practitioners and peers. And the other group that Nefertiti was involved in was when we started the karmic margin call Project Time Bank. So you probably might remember how Janet, who's on the left there, Janet Nefertiti and I, we've been volunteering hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, creating this play, creating this workshop experience about bullying and suicide. So there's all those hours that have been invested in the time bank that we've not been paid for. And that's all hours that can be invested in, that we can invest our time in at the rate of $1 an hour. On the other side, the right, is my friend Marta, who was also one of the founders of this karmic margin call project Time Bank. So she, Nefertiti, and I, and others have been in conversation about what is our vision for this time bank. How are we serving others? How are we helping others understand this material? How are we helping others understand how to change the economy through time banking? So Nefertiti's efforts have led to 20 hours, and that's minimum 20 hours that have been invested by Janet and by Marta, who are represented by these two cells. How Nefertiti's cell now is divided out into Janet and Marta. And now if we go out again, so 2 by 2. So Nefertiti, the expression of Nefertiti's time, is with two people, Janet and Marta. So you look on the left here, Janet, you pay that forward out, and for 3 years, these are members of our bridge group. So there's Gary and Lynn, who you can get to know in the 2 by 2 algorithm, where we've had these conversations that are recorded, and we are role modeling how to continue this conversation culture. On the right, Marta divides out into two. That's Parmjit and Jamie. They were also part of the Karmic Margin Call Project for Fellowship, where we also have recordings in the 2 by 2 algorithm material That also helps to understand the conversation culture where, we learn that there's a business aspect to it, there's a legal aspect to it, there's an educational aspect to it. So there's those conversations that are available that you can view as well too. And these are all services that you are providing every time you watch these conversations that have been recorded with these people here, on this graphic. So that divides out again too. So I have graphics of people here from the database, but we'll put people that you have probably seen here in this conversation with the natural law and regenerative economies. So, there's Randy, Nini, Ray, and Tina on the left, all of whom have been participating in these conversations. On the right, you've got Jared, Melanie, Trey, and Kylie on the right there. They're all involved in this conversation. So, with natural law and the regenerative economies. So as you are watching this as well too, you become part of that cellular division. So what's happening is, we're putting in that time, listening, responding, asking questions again, really being exploring what is this that we're actually doing. So here's the pyramid again. So if you remember the law of relativity, I compared the pyramid to our current debt-based system, which is about 315 trillion, globally. So that's the global debt. That's what we're living in. That's what sets up this hierarchical experience that we're living in at the moment, where it's about right or wrong, good or evil, tribalism, cultural tribalism. Is my tribe better than your tribe? And that's those are the narratives that guide this very competitive paradigm. So in the middle of that, so there again, there's the $315 trillion debt. So let's just say this cell divides and divides and divides. And, once it divides 20 times, that's 20 million hours. So, divides up again, maybe 30 to 40 more times. That makes up a $1 trillion asset. So now you're starting to see, oh, there's a growth happening within the system that's playing by different rules, that has different DNA, psychological DNA, where, it's more about collaboration than it is about competition. So that's starting to grow, and then as everybody is paying that forward, if everybody is understanding of how this works and how it's about collaborating and how it's about sharing and how it's about investing $1 per hour based on your effort, nobody else's, just your effort. You pay that forward to two people, whether it's in a living library, in a time bank, in any environment that's agreeable to you. Pay that forward to two people. It doesn't take long for that 1 trillion to become a 2 trillion asset, and then two to become four, four to become eight. Again, it's not about convincing people about this. This is about helping people, providing the space for people to understand how this works. And I'm going to get into the accounting, and I'm going to get into the logistics of this in the next recording. But as you can see, now this mass is starting to grow within this fixed structure. And that is where whenever one cell reaches its life cycle, which is $1,048,576, the cell dies, and it may be like if it's like for instance a person I just had Nefertiti as the centerpiece disappear, she'll be re-entered in as another cell down the line. So what it is, it's also about honoring the ending, the death and the decay of once you reach that 1 million point, your cell kind of passes on its knowledge to the next two cells, and that is what helps this new organism grow. So then you see the next two disappear, and this mass is growing in size even more. Okay, so as it grows, this is where everybody is able to realize the full maturity of their time investment. And as it expands, the original cells, they decay and die eventually. And because this is based on time, it's not based on people. You can enter in as much as you want. Because when you understand that all you're doing is you're changing the value of an hour. You're not changing the value of a currency. You're not changing the value of a commodity. You're not even changing the value of an organization, because this is not an organization. This is just agreements between people that we're all entitled to share good fortune. We're all entitled to share with each other, even if I disagree with you. Even if you are completely different from me. This is me making the commitment to you that I want to understand, and that if collaboration is possible, great. If it's not, then that's an agreement as well too. The agreement to not collaborate is also an agreement as well, as long as it's conscious. So what happens is the cells continue to grow out and keep growing out until it's potentially 25 times more than what the current debt-based system is currently valued at. So there's 5 quadrillion hours. I went into the details about that in previous conversations, law of cause and effect. Um, so that's what we're building here. So what this really measures is not so much the money, it measures what we as a people, how we're evolving into more of a collaborative society and away from the competitiveness. And that's going to look different for every single person. And our values are going to change as we are interacting in these new environments. And again, I can't stress enough, at first, especially since we're so used to dealing with our own trauma, we're so used to dealing with our own conflicts and competition, it's not easy to be in collaborative cultures. The people who have showed up in this conversation with the natural law conversations, these are people who are ready to have these conversations. And if you're watching this, then I would assume you're ready for these conversations as well too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to keep your attention span for this. So that's why I say in the law of magnetism, it's not about convincing, it's not about pushing, it's not about competing. It's about being who you are, being completely who you are in all your authenticity, so that the people reflect back to you who you are being. So this kind of system doesn't work by trying to launch a campaign or run a political campaign and try to convince people this is the best way to do things, because it's not. It's really just calling everybody in to participate in a different environment, and you never have to push into a world that is right for you. You are bringing in, you're magnetizing, you're attracting the people who resonate with you, with your energy, and that's never a push. So I'll end this recording with the understanding and with the idea that when you're with the right people, you really can't say anything wrong. When you're with the wrong people, you can't say anything right. So if this material resonates with you, please feel free to contact me. Feel free to contact anyone who's been in any of these recordings with the natural law recordings. And yeah, we'll just let it flow. It's going to move as fast as it's going to move, and we can't control that. We can't manipulate that. It's just a matter of holding space to help others understand it. So thank you for listening, and we will go back now to the group conversation about law of magnetism. All right, welcome back. So what the viewer had just witnessed, or what had the viewer had just watched, is kind of like a visual depiction of what we went over in law of correspondence and in law of gender, about how when we have these conscious conversations, how we're going from competitiveness, which is out of more of those denser emotions that are really more deeply rooted, to more collaborative conversations like this, where we are more present to the moment, we are more present to each other, and there's a free flow of energy. I had just showed a visual of how that changes the financial system from the inside out, and it grows organically, like how cells divide. So having conscious conversations like this, practicing conversation culture, practicing collaboration, that's how we kind of stretch our brains and stretch our, honestly, stretch the plasticity of our brains so that we can understand how to change the financial system from the inside out. And the message at the end of that recording was that when we access the law of magnetism, it's not about pushing yourself into a competition. It's not about trying to convince or enforce your will on anyone else. It's about taking a look around and seeing who are the people in your space, who are the people who are naturally attracted to you and who you are attracted to. I said this in the recording as well. When you're with the wrong people, you can't say anything right. But when you're with the right people, you can't say anything wrong. That's authenticity.